The role of primary teacher is one of the most important ones that a character can play in a story, more specifically, a battle shonen. Kisuke Urahara, Master Roshi, Jiraiya, All Might, Yami, and many more characters have made their importance known throughout their respective series, not just because of their own accomplishments, but because of the indirect impact they had on the world through their students. And today I want to talk about two of the most popular sensei in the demographic, Kakashi Hatake, the copy ninja with over 1000 jutsu, and Gojo Satoru, Jujutsu Kaisen's strongest. In this video, I'll be taking a look at both of these character similarities and breaking them down in order to explain why they're almost universally loved. Comparisons between Kakashi and Gojo crop up in anime discussions fairly often in spite of their many differences. Some would say that this is exclusively because anime fans love comparing things needlessly, but this comparison doesn't come out of nowhere. Now, there are certainly very many similarities in design, characterization, and general themes when comparing these characters, even though they are vastly different at the end of the day. Take their character design, for example, the easiest thing to find in common between these two. Both Gojo and Kakashi are consistently praised by the community for their character designs, and rightfully so. Both do a really good job of creating a good and impactful first impression. The covering of the face, white hair, and lazy disposition all come together and culminate in this very mysterious and cool vibe that the audience can latch onto. Ask any fan of Naruto or Jujutsu Kaisen and they'll likely tell you that Gojo and Kakashi were intriguing to them from their introduction. Much of this initial interest has a lot to do with their character and personality, as I'll discuss a bit later in this video, but a decent portion of that positive impression comes down to looks. Just as you or I judge books by their covers or judge humans by their appearances, we are able to take one look at a character in any given story and decide what our starting disposition will be from the jump. It's very often that we don't have the full picture when we jump to these conclusions, but this unnuanced, knee-jerk, positive reaction to both Kakashi and Gojo is a good one. They simply come off as cool at a glance, and this is true for their character throughout the story, while also functioning to set up the audience for a subversion expectation later within it. Kishimoto and Gege do a very good job of making Gojo and Kakashi really suave characters in practice, while not limiting them to one-dimensional cool guys. It'd be very easy to cap both of these characters' potentials by doing this, but they live up to their established hype and even surpass it several times throughout their respective manga. It also doesn't hurt that Kakashi and Gojo are attractively drawn characters. In fact, I think you'll find their looks, even removed from the discussion of a good and useful character design, are why many people care about them in the first place. Now, I shudder at the thought of looking up the heinous things that people have said about the two white-haired sensei in this regard, but I can't lie, it's probably a pretty big contributor. Now, before I get too serious in this comparison and start going band for band with these two characters and their respective hardships, I'd like to quickly highlight the basic broad stroke similarities of their personalities. They are lazy, competent, goofy, serious, and charismatic. Some of these traits are a little contradictory if they exist at the exact same time, but they simply make themselves known at different parts of the story or when the need arises. These two are very goofy with their students and show a lot of love to them at just about every possible juncture. Now, a really funny shared trait that doesn't really boil down to their personality just popped into my mind as I was recording this, and it's the fact that neither Gojo nor Kakashi train their students all that much. Obviously, context exists for why this isn't the case. I mean, Sasuke immediately defected from the Leaf, Sakura trained with Tsunade, and Naruto with Jiraiya, and as for Gojo, I mean, he's going on missions so often, it makes sense as to why he can't train them, but it's quite funny to me that two of the most iconic teacher figures in anime just aren't present to actually teach all that often. Much of their knowledge and ideology gets passed down to them, but that's just slightly different from being there consistently to train them in the conventional sense. I'm not saying they're bad teachers by any stretch of the word. In fact, I think the opposite. However, it is quite funny to note that two of the most popular anime teachers don't be teaching for a majority of their screen time. Now, hopping back over to their personalities, one big reason for their perceived comparability comes from the specific combination of basic traits combined with the first impression made. What I mean by this is their personalities combined with how they look equals a very, very harmonious, interesting, and engaging character. Plenty of characters in fiction are lazy, competent, goofy, serious, or charismatic. However, not as many characters have all of the traits combined in the same way that Kakashi and Gojo do. Don't get me wrong, these two characters have some major personality differences, but they certainly share some resemblance to one another. In this sense, and many others, Kakashi is simply the blueprint that Gojo aligns with until he simply doesn't. Kakashi struggles quite a bit more with his own lack of strength and ability than Gojo does, but Gojo also has the unique feeling of isolation that comes with being the strongest. The burden of being able to change the world at a moment's notice weighs on Gojo's mind just as much as Kakashi's past failures weigh on his. In spite of these tumultuous feelings, Gojo and Kakashi put up a wall between themselves and the rest of the world to mask or hide those true emotions. Now, while the emotions and feelings that they are masking are different, but the similarity of masking your true feelings to the world and keeping them within yourself is a commonality between them, and it's a trait that is very cool and a trope that is very noticeable. That very masking plays a pretty significant part in the success of their character design as well, because once you realize that they not only look cool, but the way they look truly informs you about their character in a thematic sense, the construction of their design becomes that much more interesting. Kishimoto and Gege also really have a talent for writing characters that simply ooze with charisma, and these two teachers benefit from this ability in a pretty significant sense. Sometimes when analyzing characters like this, it's hard to put a finger on just what makes them cool, and I think in this instance, the reason for that is because with Gojo and Kakashi, it's almost everything about them. Their speech patterns, their style of fighting, their design, their relaxed demeanor, the cool lines of dialogue, and every other noticeable trait about them just screams cool guy.
All right, Kakashi, you win this round. Boy, that drives me nuts when you act so cool.
There's a reason it's hard to find a Kakashi and Gojo hater in the wild. It's because they're simply just very interesting characters in a general sense. Granted, in real life, Kakashi would be quite an annoying archetype to exist if you aren't a fan of a super aloof attitude. And Gojo, not only in real life, but canonically in the series, is super annoying to people that are much more relaxed or reserved, like Nanami. But the two series that they come from do a really good job of balancing out those very extreme traits. Kakashi is an extremely serious, somber, and sometimes stoic character by nature. However, his interest in, let's just say, imaginative novels is a pretty weird thing about him, and it's an example of how Kishimoto balances out the very serious aspect of a character with a slightly goofier, albeit weirder, aspect as well. He's also always late, not the strongest in the series, and can sometimes get caught up in the whirlwind of goofiness that characters like Might Guy and Naruto can create. While I would argue that Kakashi is in his element most when he is more serious and more stoic, being able to see what he's like in a more relaxed and playful environment does a lot to flesh him out as a human being, and adds layers to the onion known as Kakashi Hatake. Gojo's goofiness is actually put on display quite a bit more, and until recently, anime-onlys hadn't even been privy to the more serious side of his character. They really hadn't seen Gojo flip that switch from goofy strong guy to serious strong guy, and it's really fun to watch not only their reactions, but actually how Gojo makes that switch. Contrasting Kakashi quite a bit, most of Gojo's screen time consists of him goofing around or generally being at ease, and for the most part, a majority of his charm comes from these moments. But there are times in JJK where even Gojo needs to lock in and focus, and in those instances, it feels special because of the rarity of him getting serious. When either one of these characters needs to get serious and lock in, you can tell, you can see it in their eyes. But they also don't take themselves too seriously either, or at least you wouldn't be able to tell they do from a first glance. Now, I alluded to this earlier in the video, but beyond the design and relatively surface level personality traits that Gojo and Kakashi share, there is this underlying sense of hidden tragedy that lies in their past. Once again, I'd like to make clear that I know these characters are significantly different. I know that they aren't the same character, but let me simply describe one of these guys for you. And to help me illustrate my point better, I want you to identify them. Now, the character I'm talking about is an arrogant and prodigious fighter that was propped up to have immense talent and is humbled and given a purpose beyond their initial characterization by the loss of a best friend. This loss spurred them on to becoming teachers with the sole purpose of helping the next generation and improving upon the broken world through education. Oh yeah, and they get flashback arcs that show how they became the person they are today in depth. Now, if you thought you could tell which character I was talking about with that description, whether it be Gojo or Kakashi, I'm here to tell you that you were full of shit. This equally applies to both characters. Now, if you said both, good job, you're a genius. Now, To be fair to all the people that got it wrong, I was being somewhat vague about the message the loss of their friend imparted on them, what approach they have to teaching, and even what their occupation in their respective world was, but the resemblance still shows itself. Obito's death and Geto's defection from Jujutsu High both serve a very similar narrative purpose for Kakashi and Gojo. These things both serve to force serious character growth in these two teachers, growth that allows them to be the kind-hearted and understanding people that they are today. The flashback arcs that both of these characters receive is the receptacle for this information. It really allows you to get into the mindset of both Kakashi and Gojo and see for yourself what exactly molded them, what exactly made them into the men that they are today. Many aspects of their past are hinted at in the story prior to this, but nothing before Hidden Inventory and Kakashi Gaiden gives us this much context into who they are. Nothing explains the pain and sadness covered by mystery and comedy, as well as these respective mini-arcs. The lessons learned are different, but the archetype is similar enough to warrant comparison and simultaneous enjoyment. I know that I, for one, really appreciate and enjoy the trope that they both somewhat stand in, not only for the main cast, but as tortured, tragic individuals themselves. Kakashi and Gojo have both suffered. They both have burdens that they bear, ones that they hope their students never have to. In spite of all the similarities, just like with any comparison across manga, they don't align one-to-one, and many people feel that one character is significantly better than the other. But it's sometimes important to acknowledge what they both do right, what they both represent, that makes them resonate with so many people. Sometimes it's important to acknowledge why we love Gojo and Kakashi. Kakashi and Gojo are both such amazing characters, man, and I'm happy that I got to talk about Naruto specifically in this capacity for the first time in the channel in what feels like forever. If you enjoyed this video, or more broadly enjoyed this format, go check out this playlist of videos where I do the same thing with a ton of characters and series. I'd also be very interested in doing more Naruto content, so let me know if you'd like to hear me talk about specific characters down in the comments. I know that many people will be caught up in comparing them under this video when I made this to appreciate them both, but I do hope that for both avid Naruto fans and avid JJK fans, I was able to do your respective favorite character justice. If this video does well and you guys would like to see me doing the comparison myself, just let me know by commenting, liking the video, and subscribing so you don't miss out on more uploads like this. In any case, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one.